Why is it that when Traoré took over the government in Burkina, there were celebrations? Why is it that even when the AU in the year 2014 said in Malabo, in the year 2014 said that unconstitutional change of government will not be tolerated, we are embracing and celebrating unconstitutional changes of government? What has happened to the thing that you call democracy? Why is it that in this very country that is ours since 1982, when we restored what we call democracy and multi-party election, after every election cycle since 1992, 1997, 2002, 2013, 2017, 2022, after every election, the country is threatened with disintegration along ethnic lines. Why? There must be a problem with this thing we call democracy. And it's not only in the continent of Africa, because we are talking about the global south. It appears to be a problem in Latin America. Whether you are talking about El Salvador, or you are talking about Nicaragua, or you are talking about Venezuela, there is a problem. Why is it? Why is it that the young people who constituted the positive changes of the 1960s are now being used differently? It is Nigeria's Wole Soyinka who says that it amazes him that in the continent of Africa, young people congregate and cheer the very people who steal from them. Today, we live in a country whose greatest claim to fame is that it is led by kleptocrats, thieves. We live in a country today whose greatest claim to fame, it is led by kakistocrats, our very worst. We live in a country where we are led by ethnocrats who appeal to the primordial ethnic sensibilities of the population. Today in our country there is dog whistling. Political leaders, I use the word leaders very loosely, are telling people that in the run-up to the elections in this country, they had better go to the Aboriginal homes or they'll see. And they saw in the year 2007 and 2008. Why? And young people are cheering them on. You know, many times when I occasionally watch local television, read local newspapers, and it is a Thursday, and I see the political players thumping their chests in Kenya, how popular they are because their rally was bigger than the other one. I ask myself, don't they know that that is a statement of the state of unemployment in the country? That during a weekday, young people can come and assemble in the tens of thousands. It should be a sense of shame. But they celebrate. As my good friend said in Kiswahili, Kenya ni ngawira. Ngawira are war spoils. Kenya is divided. Some have the neck, some have the abdomen, some have the legs. And even the poorest who has not had a meal celebrates that one from their tribe is in cabinet, as if it ever mattered. That is the state of democracy in our country. And you young people, many of you are co-authors of this tragedy. Nyerere, whom I quote often, said in 1967 and later in 1995, siri ya maendeleo ni watu, ardhi, siasa safi, vijana wenye malezi bora, siha njema na bongo kali. That is the recipe for development, Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere said. And in our lifetime, courtesy of his love for his country, he succeeded in putting together 126 plus ethnic groups to think like one nation. Tanzanian will never ask you whether you are Msukuma or Mnyamwezi. They'll ask you wewe ni wa Chama cha Mapinduzi, wa Chadema, au wa CUF, au wa ACT Wazalendo. Kenya, Amulembe nation. Mulima, Mutaro, Oduadu. And Nyerere posed, how can we in the 21st century still be talking about tribe as the basis for decision making in the 21st century? In 1975, Samora Machel, he was just slightly over 30, said, in a multi-ethnic nation, for the new nation to thrive, the tribe must die and must only exist for cultural values, not for purposes of decision making. Today, in our country, when you go for an interview, they ask you to fill papers and they ask what your tribe is. And you are being hired as a professor. They ask what your tribe is. You are being recruited as an ambassador in a foreign nation and they ask what your tribe is. When you take a matatu from Rongo to Kisumu, do you ever ask the tribe of the driver? When you are flying to Europe and America, do you ever ask the tribe of the pilot? When you go to the hospital, do you ever ask the tribe of the doctor? You simply want a good doctor. Deng Xiaoping once said in 1980, it doesn't matter whether the cat is black or white as long as it catches the mice. In Kenya, we want to know the color of the rat or the cat. How can we grow? And the reason why the global south is suffering is because of that. You know, as a student of history, I sometimes listen to our politicians. It's an exercise in pain to listen to them. It is painful. It is painful because they say with their mouths what they do not believe in their hearts. When they have a podium like this and they are reading speeches that have been written for them, they sound good. But when they go to funerals in their rural homes and they are speaking in their mother tongue, it is sad and painful to listen to them. And I often look at our country like I look at mosques, and I look at Haiti. And during our own lifetime, there was a man called Jean-Claude Duvalier or Francois Duvalier, Papa Doc. He was succeeded by his son, Baby Doc, Jean-Claude Duvalier. He was a medical doctor. When he came, he seized the power. He started dabbling in witchcraft. And after that, he formed a group of goons. Goonism did not start in Kenya. He called them the Tonton Makut. As I speak to you now, a contingent of the Kenyan police is in Haiti. 90% of the capital of Haiti, Port-au-Prince, is controlled by goons. The original sin was sown by the Duvaliers forming goons. In Kenya today, you can hire goons to be physically present at a rally so that your ideas are not projected. And if democracy was a competition of ideas, there is no competition. Today you can also hire online goons called bloggers. So goonism has migrated from the political rally site onto the keyboard. They wake up with only one agenda: to deploy all the insults ever invented by man directed at their target. They create images of you in a state of nature and circulate them to the unsuspecting world. And as the saying goes, lies often take the lift, the truth takes stairs. That is the situation in which we find ourselves in this country. The youth must therefore ask the question: if the global south is to have a new system of governance, what must we do? This is the question that we are asking. This is the question that we are bringing to you who are the intelligentsia. Because you are in a totally different space. You are being exposed to knowledge. What will you use that knowledge for? In the great Hindu epic, the Mahabharata, the greatest and longest poem ever written by man, 11 times longer than the Christian Bible, 3 times longer than Iliad and Odyssey by Homer, written 5,000 years before the Christian Bible. Sage Via says that education is that which changes you inside out. If education does not change you inside out, it is no more than the clothes that you wear in the morning and remove in the evening. You young people, how is education changing you inside out? What are the moral anchors? And I hope in this university there are no organizations such as Luo Students Association. I pray they are not. I hope that in this university there is no Kisi Student Association. I hope that there is no Kikuyu Student Association here. But I hope that there is an association of sociology students, an association of students of mass communication. That is what Africa needs, people who are organized around knowledge, not about primordial ethnic affinities. Because Africa and the global south will never grow until we are able to liberate ourselves from these primordial ethnic instincts. We talk about the global south, which includes China, which includes India, which includes Brazil, which includes Indonesia, which includes Argentina. The African continent is the youngest continent on earth today, 1.4 billion and counting. The average age, depending on whoever is doing the statistics, is between 18 and 20, the youngest. Over 75% of the African population is below the age of 35. And yet our GDP, gross domestic product, all of us, is no more than 3 trillion. It is smaller than the GDP of the Federal Republic of Germany, with a population of only 80 million and a GDP anything between 5 and 6 trillion United States dollars. The Singapore that we want to go to, which we'll never go to, has only a population of 6.1 million. Is 773 square kilometers. We have 582,000 square kilometers, a population of about 55 million, a GDP give or take of 140 to 147 billion United States dollars. Singapore, 560 billion United States dollars. They respect the law. When you see them driving in the streets of Singapore, they respect street lights. Street lights are not there for decoration. When you spit or you chew gum and you drop it, you pay a fine in Singapore. Salaries are paid on time. When you steal, you are punished. In our country and most of the third world in Africa, when you steal, we give you a national honor and we appoint you into cabinet. How can we dare say we are going to Singapore when we are doing the wrong things? And it is you who must change. Some of you here belong to the Roman Catholic Church. And I want you to read an order that I have clicked attention on, the Benedictine order. When a priest is being ordained, they prostrate on the ground. And in Latin, they say conversatio morum. It is a complete change of heart. You become a new being. We must become new beings. We must say that we have sinned and fallen short of the glory of both God and man. We must exorcise the ghost of theft which resides in us. We must exorcise the ghost of negative ethnicity which resides in us. Koigi wa Mwere, whom Barack Okwaro Maina Muluka has published in his book Toward Genocide in Kenya, The Curse of Negative Ethnicity, warns us that we have tempted God for too long. Our cup of iniquity is getting full. Nations don't collapse dramatically. They collapse when you least expect it. We must change. And how do we change? We change by doing things differently, by taking a solemn vow. You know, many times when I read the Christian Bible, and I read it often, I read certain verses and I read them keenly. There is one that African politicians love, that all leadership comes from God. Nonsense. Nonsense on stilts. Some leaders are punishment from God. You have sinned so much by making the wrong decision that God sent as a punishment. And those of you who are Christians, I also want you, whenever you are reading that, because during this period they are going to come with the tithes and offerings and look as holy as the angel Raphael, Michael and Gabriel combined. Tell them there is also another verse in the book of the prophet Hosea, at chapter 8 verses 4, you can fact check me, says, you have raised among yourselves leaders and kings whom I have not appointed. Let us change. You young people can change it. You can only change it if you take a solemn vow. You must be sacrificial about it. You must ask yourself, why do you elect people into office? Are they going to fight corruption? or they are going to engage in primitive accumulation of things. You know, many people in Kenya say there is Roho Mtakatifu. No, the Roho in Kenya is Roho Mtakakitu. In fact, it's the Roho Mtakavitu. That is the spirit that is alive in Kenya, even in churches. Even in churches. And don't tell me that in churches is not there. Go and read the book of Matthew, at chapter 24, verses 24. There shall come many Christs, and they shall work wonders. And if it were possible, they shall confuse even the very elect, if the days were not shortened. I'm submitting to you that these are those days. There are many Christs roaming around the world, calling themselves apostles, prophets, and many other things. Yet you and me know that in the Jewish tradition, the last prophet was Malachi. In the Christian tradition, the last prophet was John the Baptist. There are no more prophets, only disciples. So all these quacks you hear calling themselves prophets say, you will not be cheated, I'm a Christian of Berea. Who asks? So those of you who are Christians here, if you want to give it a spiritual dimension, in order to change the crisis of governance in the global south, read the Bible a lot more keenly. Those of you, and I'm sure there are Muslims here. Do we have Muslims in the assembly? Ramadan Kareem. And if there are Muslims, I want you to also read. And I want you to read leadership in the Quran. When the Prophet died, the person who should have been the first of the Rashidin to take over from him was Ali. Ali allowed Omar to take over. When Omar died, once again he was told, fight for this thing. He said, no, for the sake of the Muslim Ummah, I'll allow Abu Bakr. When Abu Bakr died, he was said, take it again. He said, for the sake of the Muslim Ummah, I'll allow Uthman to take over. He became the fourth caliph. And after him, the Swahili word fitina comes from the Arabic word fitna. And if you read Islamic history, you'll read about the wars of the fitnas. And that is how you now have the Sunni, the Shia. And the Prophet himself is on record as saying that before the return of Isa bin Maryam, who is Jesus Christ, there shall be 73 sects of Islam, of which only one will be the true one. Even if you are Muslim, leadership is about consent, is about the people. What are we doing in agriculture? The leaders that come here and tell you whether it is 1 term or 2 term, that cannot be a basis for governance. It is what they want to do in agriculture. You have agriculture here. Your teachers of agriculture will tell you, we consume as Kenyans 9 billion eggs every year. 9 billion. We only produce 5 billion. Are the leaders telling you how we are going to produce the next 4 billion? Or they see it as an opportunity to import things that look like eggs from China? We live next to the lake here and we are importing fish from China. And you go to Kisumu and they tell you, Nyar China met kochiel. The daughter of China is nice when it is fried. How can we possibly be importing fish from China? We are destroying our lake through cage farming, which is uncontrolled. It is acceptable, but it must be controlled. Are they talking about that? This is the sugar belt. When was the last time that the sugar farmers were properly paid? Yet they are importing sugar with mercury from Brazil, and we are consuming poison on a daily basis. Rice, we are importing, and our arrow is dying. Are they telling you that? These are the questions that you young people, in fact, I wish that young people would tell the current political class, we are no longer interested in political rallies in open field. We want town hall meetings where we interrogate what you are telling us. That is the only time. You know, recently I watched the elections in Japan. No political rallies. They were campaigning via television and social media. The number of registered voters in Japan is over 100 million, with over 500 electoral seats. Within 7 hours, the winner was known. Within 7 hours. In Kenya, people assemble at the bomas of Kenya from 34C or B or A. We are still waiting for Tharaka Nithi. 2 weeks down the line, people start declaring themselves winners. And when one is ultimately elected, you doubt whether he or she won at all. And our votes are no more than 22 million. We can't even count when it comes to voting. The time is now. Somebody sent me a message. I was away in Lusaka, Zambia on that day. And he sent me an image of the rallies that were taking on. One in Kakamega, one somewhere in Siaya, and another one in Nairobi. He thought I would be impressed. I said, I am not impressed. I am not impressed because I want to know the issues that were raised. Because what I see happening here is chest thumping. Bullies trying to demonstrate to each other who is the better bully. And I told him, if you never know and you have ever seen how a country produces refugees, this is how it begins. This is how it begins. This is how it began in Sudan. When a group of people are intolerant to ideas by the young people, it is the duty of young people to be revolutionaries in their youth, to question. And when they question, you do not fight them, you call them into an agora and privately and talk to them so that you are moved not by force but by the force of reason. Today, it is force, not force of reason. And let me tell you, history is consistent. And Fidel Castro once said it before he raided the government of Batista in Cuba. It is the duty of the young people to knock the door, because history has demonstrated that there is a crop of old people, not all of them, who once they have assumed and acquired the taste of power, removing them and separating them from the seat of power is like tearing the sun from the skies. In Kenya, they are such as those. Yesterday, as I draw to the conclusion, I was telling young people that the problem largely in the global south is that when you get into power, it is not for service, it's to be served. Have you ever seen that a person whom you knew as an ordinary, gentle individual, if he is elected as an MCA or a member of parliament or a cabinet minister, he begins to forget many basic things. One of them is to open the door of his or her car. They no longer know how to open. It must be opened for them. They no longer know how to carry their phones. No, they can't. It's too heavy. It is carried for them by individuals called PA. They no longer know how to carry their handbags if they are lady. There is a man or a woman who walks behind them carrying that bag. They no longer can take water without being tasted because they think everybody tries to kill them. You treat them like gods. If one of them were to enter as I'm speaking, everybody would stand and he would be told, you are God's gift to us. The Lord has brought you. And if the front seats were full, you would see somebody moving close to one of the fellows and telling him, he has come, leave the seat. When you treat people in positions of service like demigods, sooner rather than later they think they are demigods. We must stop it. I want you to read Chinua Achebe's The Trouble with Nigeria. And he gives an example of what happened at one time when he was in Ireland. They were waiting for the Prime Minister of Ireland. And he thought that it was like in Africa, where before the Prime Minister comes, first of all, he comes late to disrupt affairs. And nowadays what they do is they hire a helicopter so that as they are arriving, all the tents are flying in the air. Meanwhile, they have come 3 hours late. And before they arrive, they are wide-chested individuals who will come and looking menacingly from closed doors. And once they come, then you know they have come. In the Irish case, Chinua Achebe said, they sat everybody and a lone man walked in. And they said, the Prime Minister has arrived. We may now start. And he was dead on time. I look forward to those days. And those days can be brought back. My friend Barack Okwaro Maina and I have been accused by our enemies, known and unknown, that we live in a world called utopia, which is unreal. He will tell you at one time, when we thought that we had a contribution to make to this country, in the year 2006, we formed a political party. Historians don't remember that. Chama cha Uzalendo. We had many of our friends, we say, sisi ni wazalendo, patriots. You are talking issues. I visited him as he was campaigning in Huisero. We moved in Yala. And they were saying, Muluka tunataka pesa. They were not interested in ideas.